What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the More Show. Now on today's show I'm about to be joined by my guest Jo Gifford. Now Jo is a light language channeler who will be discussing a very important subject today, which is the inner child healing, and she's also doing a transformational workshop series that we'll talk about as well throughout the interview. Now this is a very kind of important subject to me as well right now, with the things that I'm going through as well in my life. There was a lot of resistance to doing this interview, but I know it's just so important for people to hear this. I never used to really understand what inner child healing is, and I'm about to go into it a lot deeper with Jo, but just having to do a tiny bit of research for this interview, it's just so important, this stuff is, right? And there's a lot to get through here, and I'm going to do my best to do that. So without further ado, Jo Gifford, welcome back, and thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, Kevin, so much for having me back. I know we talked last time after the interview about another aspect of my work, which is the inner child work. And I really believe that the information and the experience that I've had over the last 15 years within my practice can help people who are watching today. So thank you once again for having me on.
Well, yeah, we did talk about the inner child healing, and gosh, that seems like a long time ago, that conversation right now. But I know that you'll refresh myself with it, and I know you've got quite a bit to discuss on that, because you feel that's the missing part in the work that you do.
Well, I think there's the concept that we create our reality. There's the concept that we are creator beings, through the law of attraction. And yet many people struggle to make and create what they want in their worlds. And a lot of the people that come to see me talk about this, why do I create the same thing over and over again? Why can't I break out of this pattern of whatever that pattern is, the same sort of partner I'm magnetizing to me, or the same block comes up again and again? And through my observation, the most important thing to now contemplate is, where do your perceptions come from? Why do you look at the world the way that you do? Why do you think XYZ is good, or ABC is bad, or that this is possible or that is not possible? And all of these concepts are adopted in those very early years. Now, I often ask people, Do you think you are choosing how to view the world? Do you think that you are choosing how to act in this situation or that situation, in this conflict, wherever? And I would say many people are not choosing how to be in the world. We are not choosing how to act in the world. We are conditioned to respond like Pavlov's dog. So when we see something or hear something, encounter something, it is not our adult self that is choosing how to respond. From my experience, it's the inner child that is responding. So within us, if you were to look at the energy you are emitting and look at that energy within a pie chart, your adult aspect, the one that is well read, that has done lots of courses, spoken to many people, knows what you want and knows what you don't want, exists at the same time as your inner child. So this is how I define it or show it using my hands or using this illustration. So here's your adult self looking at the world, and here's your inner child. Now, if you were to look at the energy that both of these aspects are emitting, your adult self is really only this much of what you are emitting. This much is, according to the law of attraction, this much is being magnetized to your adult self-aware aspect. The bulk of the energy we are all emitting is coming from the inner child's perspective. So the bulk of the energy that is affecting the law of attraction is this little child, its perception. So around the age of 7, we put on as essentially a pair of glasses with filters in them, and we forget that we've put them on. And we are looking at the world, assessing the world, reacting to the world, unknowingly from the perspective a lot of that inner child. Now, the truth is, or the situation is, that we are raised by dysfunctional people. That's the truth, because nobody teaches emotional intelligence. Nobody teaches how to heal your inner child. It's not in the education system. It's not commonly known, or it hasn't been up until now. So who is raising you? Who is impressing you with their perceptions and concepts are two adults with wounded inner children. So they are overlaying their pain and their perception onto you. Now, the Jesuits have a phrase, give us the boy till 7 and we will give you the man for life. And what this is saying is, and it's what behaviorists acknowledge, is that we are sponges as children. We can't analyze or assess what anybody is showing us. And who is showing us is our parents, grandparents, the people closest to us in those early years. So we take all this on as gospel truth. And as we grow up, these concepts become the foundation of our personality. So this is where the knee-jerk reacting comes from. This is where the conditioned response comes from, like Pavlov's dog. We might want A, B, and C, but if your inner child did not see that A, B, and C was possible when you were little, that little kid will say, no way in hell. So you might have a brilliant business idea. You might have a concept that you want to explore. And you, through your reading, through your looking around the internet, looking around the world, you can see that it's successful, that other people are doing it. So you go for it. You start getting like a business license. You start looking into getting this up and running. Now, the situation is, if your little child didn't see success as a possibility or a truth when they were little, They will sabotage your efforts to create that business. Now, your inner child isn't a separate voice. It's not a separate being. The inner child is the source of your doubt, your disbelief, your hesitation, and your procrastination when going for this. So another way to explain this is with relationships. So we might have a woman who's a lawyer, who has her own home, her own business, fantastic life, but she keeps drawing to her men that treat her like a doormat. Now, what she knows logically is, I'm successful. I'm independent. I'm a good person. I try and help people. Why can I not draw a man to me that treats me with respect? And it's because when she was little, the likelihood is that she never saw potentially her dad treat her mum with respect. So the little child believes it's inevitable that this is what male-female relationships look like, no respect or something similar. So the energy she is emitting, the woman, the adult, is predominantly from that child's experience of relationships between mum and dad, for example. So who is drawn to her is a partner that sets up a similar exchange between her and her partner. So it's a playing out of a concept that the child adopted as gospel truth when they were little. The other option is that mum gave up work to become a mother, and she feels unappreciated. She feels that she has no worth within the marriage. And so the little child will observe mother and absorb the truth about this interaction between her and her dad. And this becomes the conditioned response. And this is why we draw to us people over and over again, and we have the same interactions. Why do people marry the same person over and over again? Why are you betrayed, for example, over and over again? Why do you fail over and over again, despite your best efforts, despite affirmations, despite visualizations? Because the majority of the energy you are emitting, which is influenced by the law of attraction, is drawing to you people and situations that match a truth that you absorbed as truth as a little kid. Everybody drop into their hearts. And take a breath. Izukuya tu jeti andarekike siendaka. Embe tukianaka. Ejutia sekuteya shosiziatianaka. Embiata. Kike kukaya chetsu ze etianaka. Ijusheasiaka. Embiakukanyana. So why does the law of attraction not work for me, you might ask? I'm doing everything I think I need to be doing. It's because your inner child's perspective doesn't allow it to be a possibility. And these two energies exist inside of us on a seesaw. They cannot be in control of us at the same time. So you work to get this new job going. You do all the things you should be doing. But at some point, that little one's perspective, who saw dad struggle, or who saw dad working in an unfulfilled job where he's not appreciated, where it's 7 days a week, etc., that's the energy. That's really your belief. And it is so subtle for many people that it's like hitting your head against a brick wall, because you work and you try and you do and you manipulate, do whatever you can do to get it working. But until you uncover the beliefs that were adopted by you as a truth in your inner child, you will be in a struggle to create what you want, whether that's a good relationship, whether that's abundance, whether that's a well-paying, joyful job. I jutei ko kang jet sastiena, I tu koyosh tustesi, chetsi komba atuштena kamakia. And breathe. O shea si o shashia tsakananyandra kike, sukie jutaya shea si andara kikamba e chutsayanakia.
But it must be true as well then that some people are not having these inner child issues, and maybe they've had a childhood or in that period of growth that you're talking about, that they've not experienced some of the harsher things or some of the issues that others have, and actually they're not having inner child issues. I mean, I'm guessing for some people it's not for, some lives. Are you saying that all lives have issues and everything is an issue relating to the inner child, or actually some lives, their issues are not related to inner child issues?
Well, if you're struggling to create what you want, if you're struggling to get the relationship that you want or the job you want, or even the spiritual path that you want, or the success or the evidence of being on a spiritual path, if you're struggling with any of those, for me, your first line of inquiry is your inner child. And yeah, it doesn't apply to every single person, but even some of the most successful people are in a way influenced by their inner child, because what makes them, or what put them on the path of, say, being a high achiever or a type A type personality, is something that told them that was the way I need to be when I was a child. So I actually would say everybody from Barack Obama to Mother Teresa is in some way influenced by perceptions and perspectives absorbed as a child.
Where does that part, though, of what the soul wants versus what the inner child wants? I mean, there's a soul journey, isn't there, where that soul, your soul, is pushing you, guide. Well, you could use the word guide, and I'm going to use the word pushing. Actually, I'll go back to that. Pushing you, forcing you down a road that it knows best. But that doesn't seem to come into the idea then of inner child as much. It's the oversoul. It's like, no, this is not what you need. You need this. Go for it. Pain.
The other name for the inner child aspect is the unfinished business from other lifetimes. So before we're born, we get together with our soul group and we say, I need to learn this. I didn't learn this in the last lifetime. And someone else will say, well, I need to learn something similar. So let's meet up sometime in this life and have this interaction, which will potentially help us grow. So what we do is we are magnetized to our parents energetically, because their wounds, their inner child stuff, their unfinished business most closely resembles ours. So when we are magnetized to parents, we are set up in this lifetime. This is where it's established to have certain experiences. So we come in to parents who have specific wounds, low self-worth or powerlessness, whatever, because that's what we haven't yet owned. So on a bigger picture, your soul has drawn you to your parents to help you, put you on a path of having these experiences, because the energy that you end up emitting after, between the first 7 or so years as you get older is really your unfinished business. And the reason that you are having all of these experiences is to try and gain the wisdom of something. So, for example, if you have been trying to find that great job and you feel powerless to create what you want, your unfinished business is around being powerless. And how it's set up is you come into parents that either feel powerless themselves or make you feel powerless, or whoever's closest to you. It can be an aunt or an uncle, grandparents, whoever's in your little home in those first 7 or so years. So if your issue is powerlessness, then you are made to feel it as a child by the way the parents treat you, or you see it as a truth about this world from your parents. So you begin to emit, I am powerless, I am powerless. That's a truth that you absorbed when you were little. So all of these things come to you that show you that over and over again. It's a mechanism of evolution. This is the big picture. This is your soul wants you to wake up in the middle of it and go, you know what? I'm not powerless. I am going to take responsibility for this. I am going to look at this from a different perspective. I am going to move out of victimization and see what is the deeper answer in this. And breathe. So for the woman, the lawyer that attracts guys that treat her like a doormat, her issue might be that she doesn't have any value. And she was shown that as a child, or she saw her mum exhibit it. But in another lifetime, in another now, she also felt that she didn't have value. And that could be in any number of different lifetimes. And so what the soul does is keep you having experiences that show you that you don't have value, that press this button, that trigger this response in you. And as you eventually, when you start on a path of self-awareness, when you understand that it is your unfinished business, it is something that you need to resolve, pull out of victimization, look at it differently, and start looking at the emotion of powerlessness, start feeling it, start breathing it, looking it in the eye. That act of looking at it from the observer, which is very, very important, from saying, what is this conflict supposed to teach me? You start the alchemization of the energy that's in that powerlessness concept. And when we look at it and feel it and breathe it, which is part of the inner child healing, we alchemize it. And in the alchemization, we begin to change what it is we are emitting. And what comes to us will show that change within us. But the problem is nobody wants to feel what's inside the inner child. We push it away, or we eat it down, or we drink it down, or we work it down, or we shop it down, or we exercise it down, or we gamble it down. Whatever our preferred method is of not really getting into the grief and pain and the sadness that is in the inner child. And why did it get split off in the beginning? Because it was the only way a child can cope. It was the only way a child could, it was a survival mechanism to split off from those emotions. And thus we, as we got older, continued the job of pushing it away, pushing it away. And while we push it away, it won't heal. While we push it away and resist it, it is still going to be emitted And predominantly, most of the energy we are emitting is coming from here, from the inner child, because it's stuff we haven't resolved and we've been trying to resolve, possibly for a few lifetimes. So the other important aspect of the inner child healing is to be able to lift up and look at what's been happening in our lives from a loftier perspective, a higher perspective, and ask, what can I learn? And that starts the beginning of that alchemization of the energy we are emitting.
What led you to the work of inner child healing then? I mean, I had no idea that this was such a big part of your work.
It happened so organically, Kevin. Like, I never intended to be an inner child healer. As I said, I think I've said last time that I started out as a tarot reader in my practice. Now, understanding what makes me tick, why did I act this way, why did I see the world that way, has always been an interest for me. I've just been, as my sister calls it, a navel gazer, a belly button gazer. I've always been looking within, wanting to understand me. And so I became sort of a student of the human condition. Why did I think that was wrong and that was right? All of this stuff, as for the last 30 odd years. So when I returned to Australia, I spent some time overseas. When I returned to Australia, the first job I got was simply tarot reading at a store. And I just did tarot reading. And somehow when people would say to me, I can't find the right guy, I can't find a guy that treats me with respect, I began to draw upon my experiences, what I saw and understood throughout the previous 30 years, and it transitioned into understanding the truth about the influence of the inner child. It is incredibly profound. It is essential, in my perspective, to understand how you are conditioned to respond. And those perceptions are set up without you wanting them or being able to assess them or analyze them. They are set up and hardwired into your brain. So for example, when I say to you, Kevin, the color yellow, what's your first thought? What do you associate with yellow?
It's not a colour I'm attached to, but there's not much.
The sun or the flower?
But only because you've said it. That didn't come to my mind to begin with, yeah.
Well, it's called associative memory. And for many people, when you say yellow, what's your first thought when I say yellow? Someone might say flower. Someone might say sun. Now, what happens is when you're little, somebody will get something that's yellow, like it could be a blanket, it could be something. And how you are with kids, you go yellow, yellow. The teacher might go yellow, yellow. And then they point at the sun and they go yellow, or they point at a flower and they go yellow. So what happens in our brain is we have a clump of neurons, a cluster of neurons that formed around when we were shown yellow. Then someone showed us flower. And what happens is those two things get connected in your brain. It's literally joined. Now, so when some people, like in Australia, when we are asked red, we say blue in Australia, because redheads, this is the myth that redheads have a temper and they get into fights which are called blues. So in Australia, our associative memory is red and blue, whereas for others it could be red fire engine. It's different depending on which culture you live in. So we have all of these connections. This is how the brain connections happen in our early years. So we have a neural net connection between work. So if dad comes home from work tired, or dad comes home from work humiliated because he's got a terrible boss, or if dad comes home from work unfulfilled because he's working simply to put the children through college or university or what, and he's not doing it for self-fulfillment, he's doing it as a sacrifice, and you feel his energy, you listen to mum and dad talking, or he's talking to someone on the phone about his work, and you are watching it and feeling it and hearing it, what happens in your brain is work becomes connected to all of those energies and emotions. And that's your associative memory. That's your conditioned response. That's your knee-jerk connection. Now, the same thing happens with marriage or love. You see your parents interact, and that's supposed to be love. Or parents tell you that they love you in one moment, but then they hit you or abuse you. What happens is love and abuse get connected. These things are hardwired, and every thought has an electrical and a chemical component. So every time we think love, whenever, without us realizing it, it's a very subtle, instantaneous response. That next cluster gets fired, and we feel that it's abuse. Love is abuse, or love is abandonment, or love is I have to work very hard to get it. So all of these things we are emitting, and this is why we keep drawing to us, say, people that abuse us, or people that don't respect us, or jobs that don't fulfill us, or we are absolutely exhausted in our jobs. It's not just a thought thing that's absorbed. It is, in a way, hardwired, and it's physically in our system. So we have a double whammy in trying to heal this stuff. And this is why affirmations alone don't work, because you are saying over and over again, I am wealthy, I am fabulously wealthy, blah, blah, blah. But there is a connection or a belief within you that wealth isn't possible, or that you only get money if you work a 9-to-5 job, 5 days a week, and you come home tired. Or, if you had a father that had a business and it failed, you have somewhere in your structure a belief that this is what's going to happen.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I'm just trying to keep up with what you're saying. I'm like, well, that's a good point. That's a good point. But then, because we're carrying on with the conversation, which we should be, it's trying to keep up with the thread there. Well,
you're right. This is a lot. And that's why, if anybody picks up bits and pieces from this discussion, come back and listen again. Because this is jam-packed with concepts that maybe people haven't even thought of before.
Yeah. Can there be positive attributes from your experience of working with people when it comes to the inner child, that actually what you've taken away from that inner child experience is actually positive?
Yes. But as I said, most people come to me because things are not working in their lives.
Could that still be positive? Could that still be positive?
Yeah. Because but if everything's working and everything's positive, you don't normally come and see me because for sure. And it sounds a bit crazy. What I'm saying is, like, can the disruption, can the craziness, can all the pain, can that be positive? I guess what I mean by that is that a breakout that you're going to have? I guess it is. Otherwise, how are you going to change sometimes unless you go through
a journey.
Exactly. And I think Ushio shukuya tushte kangiat sakatariashesiaka. Zukutariashesiandariaka. So take a breath. Ushia sukunyan narikike chutsasia chutsindia bakatia chakanoya tsakianakia. Kiguke jiti kamba atiasha. So the first thing I would always advise people is to find as best as possible a place of peace with where you are. So what happens is when you're in a struggle, when you are trying to change things, when you are trying to move forward, what you're normally in is a place of fight or flight. You are fighting against what is in your life, you're struggling against it, or you're running away from it or hiding from it with alcohol, TV, sex, whatever it is, you're either fighting it or you're running away from it. Now, in this place, you cannot heal your inner child. In this place, it's very difficult to move forward. So what I ask people to do is to let it go for however long you can manage it, 20 seconds, if that's all. And what you do is for 20 seconds at a time, you let go, you relax every muscle, and you just accept that your life is screwed, or you are lost, or you are whatever the horrible situation is, or the distressing situation, or the difficult situation is. If you can come in and accept it as a truth for the moment, as best as much drop the resistance and go, yep, I don't know what to do. I'm lost. Let go of struggling against that fact. You can feel a shift in your energy immediately. And what you are doing is moving from fight or flight into the relaxation response. And in fight or flight, that's what you're emitting. You're emitting, I hate this, it's got to be different, I'm stupid, I can't change it, why doesn't anybody listen to me? And that's the energy you are emitting. And thus the universe will keep bringing to you more things that prove that as a truth. So if you can, from time to time in your day, surrender to the truth, let it go, come into the center and go, you know what, I don't know what to do. Or you know what, I've failed in something, and it's okay. And if you can find peace in that moment for 10, 20 seconds, drop all resistance to what is, you begin to emit peace. And the universe brings you more reasons to feel peace. It's counterintuitive. Why would I want to accept failure? Because part of the reason you can't accept failure is because to your inner child, it was the worst thing to experience. See, again, the inner child is at the bottom of a lot of our perceptions. The inner child thinks if you accept for 10 seconds, 20 seconds that you've failed, the inner child thinks the world will stop turning. The inner child thinks they might die, because often it's connected to something deep within here that they were experiencing at the time. So if you can accept where you are, whatever that is, just for 20 seconds, you begin to emit peace, plus you also show the inner child that the world won't stop turning if you feel something that they have been afraid to feel and avoiding to feel all of their lives as a part of their survival mechanism and coping mechanism. And breathe. Ushise sukunyananakike. Shute baati jetikunyaniaka. Betushea siasia. Kuyetsia chokanea saki etsio shashiana. Ezuteanaka etusheana. So throughout your day, try and find that peace with whatever's happening. If you can feel the relief at letting go of the struggle for those few moments, you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah. But obviously after those few minutes, then things are, or whatever time that you're giving yourself that time off for, it's the struggle's still there when you want to remember it back again.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yep. Let me ask you a question. You said something really interesting before we started this interview, actually, and I don't want to get too personal with yourself, right? Because I never spoke about this really until just this moment. But the way that you mentioned to me that you came over to the States for a number of years, and then you obviously headed back to Australia. Did you find moments of quietness in the mind when you were going through the struggle that you were going through in America? Because there was a struggling time, wasn't there, which we spoke about off air for yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Look,
when you look
ultimately,
back, yeah.
I have had a very tough life emotionally, and I have gone into the reasons, and it is in my early childhood, and I've only discovered the depths of the trauma in the last 4 or 5 years. And it's possibly why I was compelled ultimately to get onto an inner child healing, because I really needed to heal my own inner child. So yes, I did struggle. I have struggled off and on throughout my life. Now, there's a phrase that I use: can you feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable? And what I'm saying is, what you resist persists. So if whatever is happening in your life, if you are railing against it, if you are victimized by it, you have less of a chance of healing it and changing it than if you say, you know what, I'm lost. This is what it is. And yes, I actually wanted to stay in the United States. I actually wanted to live the rest of my life there, but it didn't eventuate. And when I came back to Australia, I went through a very deep, dark night of the soul for quite a while. I struggled with leaving behind friends, community, and everything, and coming back to what was essentially like a foreign country to me, because of the difference in the climate, because of I didn't recognize any of the cities. So in understanding, so that scenario for me, so in my contemplation, so what I always do ultimately when I can, because I'm not an expert at this all the time, because I roll around in the mud and all of that stuff, is when I come and look at this from the higher perspective and I go, what was I supposed to be learning? What do I observe about that scenario? In that scenario, I had to leave everything familiar behind and become the outsider, because nobody understood my journey through my journey in the United States. Not least my family didn't understand it. So I was sort of the odd one out. Now, when I looked at that and I went through that and I was understanding the depths of that sadness and that grief, I knew that it was something that I had experienced in numerous other lifetimes, and possibly had gone to my grave and did go to my grave, not understanding this, not owning it. And so therefore I had a scenario of what was I experiencing being back in Australia? As I said, fish out of water, stranger in a strange land. So when I turned and faced and felt all the emotions around that scenario, and I looked those emotions in the eye and I breathed them and felt them, which is what I never did in the other lifetimes, which is why I created it again this lifetime. So I've been, on this intense inner journey. So I'm clearing up a lot of old stuff that has never been resolved from other nows, other me's, and other times, because this is the journey we're on to finally get to raise our frequency. So the issues in that dark night of the soul were a part of the energy I was emitting. So when I became brave and when I decided to turn and look that grief, that sadness and depression in the eye and feel it in every cell and feel it in every atom of my body and understand with the observer activated, so not getting lost in it, but understanding that this was a moment of healing, I transmuted and alchemized some of the energy that I was emitting. And I haven't had that sort of experience in that same way again, because I utilized that moment, those moments of dark night of the soul, effectively. It's a mechanism of evolution. It isn't something that happened to me and it wasn't fair and isn't that sad. And this is a tough thing this is a tough perspective I'm asking people to take. I'm asking people to pull out and go, what's at the bottom of this emotion? What is it that I haven't yet healed that this moment is trying to show me? And as you turn and look and feel and breathe, you alchemize it. And eventually you'll begin to understand when you are going to trigger that pathway in your brain that is around this issue. And you will say, I'm not going there this time. I recognize this. I see this. And I am going to make a decision in this moment to let that go and bring up a new thought. Now, not everybody can be that quick at changing the thought. And you might say, okay, I'm strong, I'm powerful, but within moments you find yourself being powerless again. Well, that's the time that you go in and you breathe and you feel it and you look at it. But ultimately, we will get efficient or effective at observing our conditioned responses and recognize, and I can recognize when it's going through a certain pathway in my neuronet, in my brain. And I go, here we go again. I know this is hardwired into me, and I'm going to abort the program. I'm going to press the escape key. I'm going to press Control-Alt-Delete, whatever, and reboot and choose a new thought. So there's a balance between those two processes, choosing a new thought and facing and feeling it, and seeing it and understanding it into the greatest, broadest aspect and depth that you can. Ijute kukachet sokotoriashi senzubu tokoyanaki kanda. Jite biti and zakute shishtaishtiasiaka. Kike zu esta. Kike uzeza jushe dikamba antiashosha. Sike unje noko.
Okay, well, it was Wayne Dyer who said, I've mentioned this before on this show. Wayne Dyer said, you are what you think. You are what you think. And that is a really powerful statement, because you could say, I am this, I am that. Positive things, not, could also turn that to negativity as well, right? But sticking with the positive side, I am this, I've said this before, a successful businessman. I am blah, 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 whatever it is that you think you are, right? I am a lawyer. right? Get yourself to law school then, but you be saying that mantra while you're at law school. Do you know what I mean? You personify it. I think Wayne Dyer was like, it's almost like the missing part of law of attraction, but he felt it was, because you really embody, you are what you think. So if well, okay, let's look at the negative side as well. I'm low, I'm depressed, I'm fed up, pissed off, whatever you want, so it works that way as well. Which is kind of what you were saying with some of this stuff.
Yeah, denying what you feel isn't going to help. You have to be honest. In a way, it's called integrating the shadow. While you are split between what you want and what you really feel, you will not create anything. This is from Spectrum of Consciousness. There's a book called Spectrum of Consciousness, and I'm trying to think of the chap's name, and I read it, and he has a chapter in there called Integrating the Shadow. So you're trying to be a successful businessman. I am a successful businessman.
As an example, that was what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, well, just whatever it is, I am valuable and worthwhile. I'm a good person. But here, you really don't think you are, because this is the inner child. You were told that you didn't have value, or you were shown that you didn't have value. And so you've been working to try and feel good about yourself. And so what you do is you do works of charity. You work for others. You help others. You listen to others. You assist. But you're only doing this because, in truth, in a deep way inside of you, you don't feel valuable and worthwhile. And while you're in this split, I'm trying to be good, but I really feel bad. While you're in this split of the truth, away from the truth, you won't ever heal it. You have to, and the point of integrating the shadow is to come back and be here for moments. And this is essentially this, because in here, you are not fighting what you really feel. You are not in a house divided. This is a house divided. So to heal this split, you must come back here for moments and go, look, this is the truth. And the world won't stop turning if I do this. And it's in this place of peace and acceptance that the energy begins the process of alchemizing and changing and shifting. And you are healing your frequency. What you resist persists, and what you feel will heal. So for me, the missing piece of, say, something like The Secret or The Power of Attraction is, if you don't get what is in the core of your inner child, if you don't do some analysis of what you saw, felt, and heard in those early years, you are never going to resolve some of these issues. Now, let me give you a really quick example of how some of this stuff can be embraced. You're at the airport, or say there's a grandmother, a mother, and a granddaughter at the airport. And the mother is heading off on a business trip, and the grandmother is going to look after the granddaughter. So that they say goodbye, and the mother gets on the plane, and the little girl starts screaming and crying. And the grandmother is at her wit's end, and everybody's starting to look at her saying, what are you doing to that child? Why can't you calm her, etc., etc. And in a moment of desperation, the grandmother might say, if you don't stop crying, you will never see your mother again. Now, a 2-year-old kid doesn't realize the truth of that, and they go, and they will suck in their emotions and have trouble on a deep level expressing their emotions, because in that moment of truth for a 2-year-old, they linked or got together in their brain that if they express emotions, they will lose their mother, lose the person that loves them, and it is a desperate situation. And this program can have profound effects on that woman as she grows up, because there's a subtle fear about expressing the emotion. And another example is, say a child brings home a maths test and they get 98%, and they take it to mum and dad all excited and show them. And instead of them celebrating that, the parent goes, well, where's the other 2%? And it's so that child is shocked or made potentially to look for the 2% for the rest of their lives. They are set up, they will reach a bar of achievement, and they can often become type A personalities, and they will reach a bar of achievement. But what happens is the inner child's 2% perceptions and concept kicks in, and the bar rises, and they have to keep struggling to find that and reach perfect, reach 100%. But because the inner child believes in the 2% is missing as a program, and I'm not good enough unless I get 100, the bar will keep rising, often for the rest of their lives. And these are the simple things that get set up as a conditioned response, as a way to operate within this world.
There might be some mums watching this. I'm sure there will be over time, right? And I know a few mums, and I think they do an amazing job, right? Probably put themselves really, I mean, the child is first in everything. Do you know what I mean? Which is fantastic. They provide a loving home for the kids or the kid, right? But it would be confusing for some of them. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud in my head. Maybe if they think, well, shit, what am I doing? Am I doing anything wrong? Am I what am I doing? That's creating trauma in my kid's life, and maybe they're doing nothing wrong. There's a kind of a guilt feel to this kind of work as well. For from that perspective, and I don't want there to be, but I'm just maybe that's me feeling that. What would you say to that? I mean, you're a single, you're a mum or whatever, single or with someone in a relationship. How do you know? What would you know to change? I mean,
just like you chose your parents because on a soul level they were going to put you into the right conditions to have. They're not really your children. They're old souls on a journey. They're old souls on a journey of exploration. They're not really, on one level, yeah, they're kids, and we need to nurture them and love them. Absolutely. Everybody does their best. Honestly, everybody is working from a really difficult situation. But this is the entire mechanism of evolution, that your children came into you because your genetics, your perceptions are going to help them heal their unfinished business. So for any mums or dads that are out there going, holy hell, what have I done to my kid? First thing is, deal with everything you feel in this thought. If you feel guilt, turn and look and feel the guilt from the perspective that it is an opportunity for healing and growth. If you feel you've been a bad parent or you haven't been as best as you could have been, feel all of those emotions. Now, if you've been say you were a neglectful parent and you realize that now as you've gone on, your child needed to come in to a neglectful parent because it's their unfinished business. Now, how do you heal? So all of a sudden you wake up and you realize and you listen to this and you go, oh my God, how do I heal this? You cannot, it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it works all the time to actually talk to your children and tell them what you've understood. Sometimes they're not interested, sometimes they're not open to it. They're on a totally different path to you. So they have your frequency. You are frequency specific. You are in each other's reality because you are vibrating similarly. So as you heal your own wounds, as you feel guilt or sadness or regret from the position of the big picture, from the position of the observer, your children will pick up the changes in you. Your children will feel your release. Your children, whether they can ever explain it or not, will feel something shift within you, and the relationship will begin to shift and change. So it all comes back to self, because sometimes we have children in our lives because you are learning from them as much as they are learning from you. It's not really an adult-child relationship. It's two souls in a specific configuration to have this experience, to be triggering each other. And if they're too young to understand any of these concepts, just come into the center and accept what has happened and go from there, and love and forgive yourself. Find compassion. And what you are actually showing without words is compassion to your child. Your child will see the love you are feeling for yourself. They will feel the compassion. They will feel it without really being able to explain it.
I mean, that's very powerful when you think of it, that no matter how much you fucked up, and it's not an excuse for selfishness or bad behavior, but no matter how much you think you've done wrong, you know what? As you say, there was a contract. There's some agreement there that was there for that to happen. Don't blame yourself for it. And others could say, well, that's just a wishy-washy, word salad way of just excusing yourself for poor behavior. But you're actually trying to do more than that, aren't you? When because you're saying you're taking ownership of it, becoming conscious of the behavior and wanting to shift that behavior, but kind of allowing yourself the space. It's one way of allowance to allow yourself the space to forgive yourself for holding on to anything that any blame and anything. It's just a way, isn't it? And if that way doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you to see it from that perspective. But it is a powerful way to see it, that it was all meant to be. It's all contracted before, all meant to be. So it's what you both, yeah. Because can be some extreme behavior sometimes when doors are closed.
Yes. Now look,
I'm not talking about abuse there. What I actually mean by that is screaming. Screaming and shouting. Screaming and shouting can be just as bad.
Yeah. As I said at the beginning, we were raised by dysfunctional people who were raised by dysfunctional people who were raised by dysfunctional people. Emotional intelligence needs to be taught in schools. People are not shown that emotions need to be processed, need to be looked at. It's a huge part of who we are as human beings. And yet, for guys even more so, don't show emotion. Stuff it, get on with it, soldier on. And that's incredibly unhealthy for the body and not helping you on any sort of an evolutionary path.
You do a course on this, which has been coming up on the screen, and I should have mentioned this some time ago. I think to be honest, I don't think there is so much to the inner child. Wow. Let's just mention the course, because that's it's about how do I heal my inner child, in a sense. It's inner child healing. So just tell us about the course and how people can get access if they're enjoying this conversation and they're like, you know what, I can't do this by myself, which most times you can't anyway, right? And I need someone that's going to guide me through this process, which is yourself.
So what I've got on offer for February is 4 days in February. So I've got two options. There's a midweek class or a weekend class, and we come each once a week for 4 weeks, and it's limited to 10 people. So we are going to be able to discuss our own experiences. Now, we will start talking about it. Everybody will have a chance to talk with me. We'll do some light language to help drop in the information to help change and help change the frequencies as well. But what happens is this, as I said, this stuff is hardwired into the brain. This stuff is embedded into us in a way in these early years. So the analogy I like to use is if you think of a bowling alley. Now, down the side of each alley is the gutter. And often when people are throwing the ball down to hit the pins, it rolls into the gutter and goes down. Now, when we're trying to have a new thought, when we're trying to say, I'm a successful businessman or I'm worthy of a loving equal relationship, we are throwing a bowling ball down the center of the alley to hit the pins as the truth. Now, because this is a new thought, it's easy to keep going back. And so I'm asking people to take a 90-degree turn and look at their lives and look at it from a totally different perspective of the inner child. Now, because this stuff is hardwired, it's very easy to lose that and go back into that well-worn path. Now, the point of the 4 weeks is we'll talk about it and people will put it into practice, will start observing it, observing themselves. And then in the next week, we'll talk about it. Well, this happened, that happened, I noticed that. We'll do some more processes. So over 4 weeks, people should get really be able to identify this. There are some people that can just change. When they start seeing this, they will catch themselves and go off on a new direction. But for other people, it's difficult sometimes to find that zone, that new perspective. And the 4 weeks is an opportunity to put into practice the concepts we talk about and also to discuss it in that sacred space with those 10 people each week, and maybe start some sort of little community of support to help with these new thoughts and new concepts.
So the website for that is?
www.joegifford.com.
And then?
And
yep.
It's under shop. There's shop is a tab and the bottom one is the workshop. And there are, as I said, there are 2 options, option 1 and option 2, and you can click on either depending on whether it's a weekday is better for you than a weekend.
So for people watching this in the future, right? Obviously we mentioned February there, but this could be any time of the year when someone's watching this show. So that will be updated on the website? New start dates?
I will be offering that from time to time over the year. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can also book one-on-one. I would recommend you book 3 appointments, and I'm getting together a 3-appointment package. So it's less if you book the 3 at once. Again, I'm asking people to look at their lives very differently, and sometimes it's hard to see it because we've been so close to it for so long, we can't identify what we've been doing.
No, that's true. That's true. I understand why I didn't want to do this interview when I first came on here, because I guess had it have been any other interview, like whatever that may be, just not this stuff. Well, you can disconnect your brain then, can't you? And just it's just easy, isn't it? But this is like stuff that's like very close to home for me. Well, it's exceedingly close to home.
If I could make an observation, Kevin, and I do this with much love because I'm the same as you. I live and have lived a lot in my head. You have thought about this stuff a lot. You have heard many people talk for years and years and years, and everybody has had their own perspective, their own experience and journey. How we have to change is to drop into the body. We have to let go of all the words. We have to let go of all of the discussion at some point. Once we do the analysis, once we've put together the roadmap of the inner child and how it's been operating, how we heal is to drop into the body and feel. And that's what I think you're needing to do, and many people are needing to do. It's to move into be fully present within the body, no longer analyze anything, and trust that what we are feeling and breathing and being present within is the process of healing and alchemizing the energy signature we are emitting. I'm an intellectual. I became an intellectual as a way to survive in my family. My mother and father were intellectuals, and at the dinner table, we would be discussing politics and current affairs. And I remember looking through the newspaper at about 14 years of age, trying to understand politics so I could feel a part of the family. And yet I've gone on a spiritual journey, which is about energy and feeling. So I have a battle between the head and the heart. I have a battle between logical and rational and analysis and comparison. And I can quote books that I've read years ago, quote people that I've read. But ultimately, you must leave the head for periods of time and just feel and breathe everything that you are prompted to feel in your life. And that's the next level of learning. Analysis is important. Discussion is important. It's essential to understand what makes you tick. It's essential to be heard. It's essential to voice who you are. But ultimately, the next step is to just drop into the heart, drop into the body. And in doing that, you actually move into the inner child's feelings. And by feeling all of those things, you start the healing process, and then you end up getting back to the truth and the core of who you were and who you are, the traveler that has been in everybody, in every personality, life after life.
Maybe I'm one of those not rare ones, but not the most common ones where, right now in life, there really isn't much that I want to do. Some days I feel that's a shame. There's been spurts of like, no, I wanted to do that. No, I wanted to do that. No, that's it. No, that's it. That's it. And I've just got to a point where I'm forcing myself to do things per day. Don't think that, but it's a force. There's just no drive anymore. If I didn't have to just earn a bit of money, there's a part of me that just it's just not wanting to do anything. That's been for a very long while.
Mm-hmm.
You too.
I believe it's because we are moving into a new way of existence, and everything we've done before no longer interests us. It's a sign from the soul that we are about to shift. Absolutely.
Well, that about is not, is it on our time, or whose time is this about?
It's on, I believe, a global time, and that we're all connected, that this is a group experience. And again, Kevin, everything that we're all experiencing is part of a very specific journey for this realm. So I have to tell you, I am not interested in anything in a way that's going on in the world. I've lost interest in what's happening with the climate, what's happening with the war, what's happening with politics. And I'm like just laying there going, well, what's next? And it's for me, and in fact, let me tell you a dream that I had 2 nights ago. And it sort of explains this in a little bit. And all I remember is a snippet. This woman came to me, and the dream was technicolor. And it's one of those lucid dreams that you feel through your body when you wake up. And she was the boss or the supervisor, and she said to me that I'm one of the new newscasters. And the I said, well, what about Jill and Mary and Bob and all of that? I can't remember the names I used. And as I was saying their names, it was in black and white. And their reality was black and white. It's like when TV used to be black and white and went to color. So and then I woke up. So what I understand is that the energy we are moving into doesn't look anything like where we are, where we were. And we just have to keep being open and surrendering to the path, knowing that a deeper aspect of us knows exactly what's going to happen. So with me, and what I would suggest you or anybody else who's feeling this, is to just rest in the frustration or rest in the wanting it to be different, or I don't know what to do, or I can't be asked to do anything type of energy, and live and breathe it through your system and feel it and find peace as best you can with where you are, because that stance is going to bring on this technicolor reality more than if you're going, I want it out of here. I hate this. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, because it's an energy of resistance and dislike and distaste, or resistance, hate, whatever. And that's all you will continue to bring through to you. So it's a balance between moving forward, taking steps, trying to find a way forward, and surrendering to what is. You don't deny one over the other, but you must find peace energetically and trust and surrender. If anything is needed at this moment, from my spiritual viewpoint, it is more of a connection to that deeper aspect of us that knows more than we can see with our human perspective.
Well, there's only so much isolation you can put up with.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I mean, I've not been honest about anything what I'm going through, because there are reasons why. But I mean, I've been isolated for a long time, more than most people, more than most people would want.
Unisolate yourself. Unisolate yourself.
Yeah. Well, isn't that always easier said than done? And yeah, yeah. Well,
so when you say
that's through choice, isn't it? That's through choice of getting a green card. And had I not done that, then yes, life would be different. Was it?
Well,
Was it worth it? I'll not know. But right now, I have no answers. That's how much answers I've got.
Don't then be okay with having no answers. Just accept I don't have the answer.
But the situation continues, doesn't it? It continues.
Mm. So just like when I came back from the States, I went through that dark night of the soul. There was something specific to be learned. Where you are now in this stuck situation where you feel isolated, it's happening because there's something to be learned.
Well,
and know this.
I'm only going to be as much as, I mean, I even think sometimes, hang on a minute, when I do go somewhere else, I'm going on a solo journey anyway. I mean, even if I've got neighbors next to me, it's going to be solo. Everything's solo. And I think to myself, what is the difference to this energy to that? Well, it ain't going to be much, is it?
Well,
and I don't know why I'm thinking like that in my life. I don't know why I don't know why I'm letting my life. I don't know why I don't know why I've got to this point in life where just nothing is fulfilling, nothing is happy. Just and I'm like, what this is? I don't remember being this person.
So if you were to bottom line everything you just said in the last 5 minutes into a phrase that defines how you feel, what would it be?
What would it be?
One phrase.
well, for sure unhappy, but not always unhappy. Um,
What's the rotten thing you feel the most?
what's the rawest thing I feel the most?
The rottenness. What's
What
the
the,
hardest thing? If you were to define it in one phrase, is it I can't get what I want? Is it that I'm trapped? What is the phrase? I'm
completely
hopeless. I'm powerless.
unfulfilled. Yeah, unfulfilled, powerless, but
You're unfulfilled.
unfulfilled would be that. I think, yeah, there's no fulfillment.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you were to close your eyes and hop into you as 7 years of age, could you do that now? Just pretend that you are in touch with your 7-year-old.
Well, um,
Play, pretend. Pretend you're 7, like you're a kid.
how would I have felt?
So close your eyes.
Well, I don't need to close my eyes to
Close your
get. I
eyes.
don't need to close my eyes to get there. I don't think that's going to help. I think I would have felt. I would have felt. I know that
How
feeling.
would your 7-year-old define that I am unfilled? How would your
I wouldn't have
7-year-old say
contemplated
that?
that. Well, I wouldn't have. That kind of contemplation wouldn't have been there mentally. Not a lot was there mentally. Do you know what I mean? But I think it would have just been. There was just a carelessness, no care whatsoever. Um, uh,
Nobody cares about me.
no. There was a carelessness with life from myself. I didn't care about anything. There was no attachments to
Even
it.
at 7 years of age?
I didn't care about much. I don't think. I think I was just happy, just being. For some reason, I was just happy.
Well, I would beg to differ. And this is, I'm just
Well,
throwing this out
I, I,
there.
I
You can
I
throw this
presume that's how
away,
I
but
felt.
this,
I can't, completely remember, but I would. I think I pretty much I would have been, yeah, happy, yeah, yeah. So I would beg to
yeah,
differ as well with what you said, but
you
that's how I
can.
remember it.
You,
Yeah.
okay. So what, from the inner child perspective, the situation and scenario that you're in right now is something that you have experienced in some other way, shape, or form, in some
Or
way,
maybe it's not even
all your
from this
life.
lifetime.
Or
Yeah.
this life in some way, shape, or form. That this is the latest moment that you are experiencing feeling unfulfilled. Where this unfulfilled comes from is something you decided was a truth about the world when you were little. And you learned this in some way. And a 7-year-old would express, I am unfulfilled, in a very specific way. It's what you, as the adult, have grown up. And as you've experienced the inner child's influence, you've analyzed it and assessed it and understand it and define it from the adult. In defining it from the 7-year-old, you will find the root cause of why you feel unfulfilled at this moment. That's how the inner child works. And as I said, it doesn't, from my perspective, every person that I work with finds answers in this line of inquiry. And it may not be for everybody. Absolutely, truthfully, it may not. But if anybody is listening, that's how you do it. You look at your current life, you write a few paragraphs of what's not working, what you wish was different, and then you find the phrase that defines why that, how that is, what it is. I am powerless, I'm useless, whatever it is.
It could be just as simple as, like some of these people, some guys are just like, they just work better being with someone, having a partner, right?
Mhm.
I think I'm that guy. I think I am. Because every time I did
Mhm.
have a partner, I never felt like that. I think I think the isolation of that, it plays a massive, thinking about it just plays a massive factor, um, For me, it does. It just feels so unnatural. Not unnatural, but it is not. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I agree. So, what do you remember about your mum and dad's relationship in the first 7 or so years of your life? What did your dad do for a living in the first 7 years? What was your mum and dad's, where were you living? How were they interacting? What's your first memories of your mum and your dad when you were very little?
Lots, but
When you say loss, in what
no,
way?
lots. Um,
Lots.
mm, mm, um, God, well, I don't know where to start, but uh,
What's your first memory that pops into your mind of your mum and your dad
well, there
when
was a
you
bit
were
of
very...
there was a bit of screaming now and then. I do remember arguments, and that shouldn't. I don't really want to say that as like a defined fucking memory, but yeah, there was that. I think we tend to
So if there were
remember
arguments,
those ones, don't we? Sometimes more than the other good ones. Yeah.
so if you were watching arguments as a child between
Not all
two
the time,
people
but
who were
yes,
in
they
a
did happen. Yeah,
sometime,
yeah, yeah.
but if you were watching from time to time arguments between two people that were married, that were in love, what do you think you would
Yes,
have
yes, yes, yes,
assumed
yes, yes.
about relationship?
Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yep, yep. Um, but
Can I give you
but
another really broad example
mm-hmm,
of
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
this? How this works. I
Mum,
had a
Dad,
guy come to
you did
see.
your best, by the way. If you're watching this, God, Jesus. Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
loved
yeah,
all parents.
yeah,
I
yeah.
send out love. This is an incredibly tough place to be a parent in, and I'm not a parent. I'm not a parent. I didn't go there. So I honor every parent, and what a tough problem. Yeah. Um, so I had a guy come to see me who had a drug and alcohol problem, and he had been to rehab and everything, and he still couldn't get through this problem. And I said to him, "Well, what was your childhood like?" And he said, "Oh, it was great. We went to good schools. We
Yeah,
had lots of
mm-hmm,
clothes. We had
yeah,
lots of food.
yeah.
We went on holidays,
And
etc.,
I can
etc."
relate to that as well because that was all the same as well. Yeah,
Right. So I said to him, "Well, what is your first memory of
yeah.
your mum and
It's
your
the
dad?"
shouting or whatever it may be. Yeah,
And
yeah,
he sat there for a moment. Truly, he sat there and he said, "Well, I do remember a night when Dad kicked down the door of the bathroom and Mum was inside." And I just went, "Okay." So, as an adult reflecting back on that moment, what do you think as an adult could have created that scenario? And he said, maybe Dad was abusing her. Why would Mum lock herself in the bathroom and Dad would be kicking it down? Or maybe Mum was committing suicide, trying to, there could be some serious reasons. And he just, like, you could just see his eyes widen. And I said, "So, what, for me, my explanation of why he was drinking was he was pushing down the grief of what was really happening between his mum and his dad. The sadness, the grief, maybe even fear for mum or dad or himself." And he said, "I do have another memory now." And it just popped up. And he said, "I was in the car with Dad driving down the driveway at night and Mum was standing at the front door crying." And that's all he could remember because we don't remember a lot. We push it aside because it's too hard as little kids. So in those two questions, I said to him, "What do you think is really underneath your alcohol and drug abuse?" And I said, it's from my perspective, you've got some healing to do. And so I sent him off to a counselor, and I said, you need to go and start talking, because he had told his counselor, he's in rehab, that his family was great. He went on holidays. That's here. That's this one perspective.
And I'm glad you did refer
and
him to someone like that. That's the right thing to do. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely. It was too much for me. This has been very early on, and I'm a tarot reader at this point. I'm not, so I just went, look, you need to go and get some help, because you have just cracked the reason why you can't get off drug and alcohol, because the alcohol and the drugs are what you use to keep this at bay, which is what you learned to do when you were a little kid. So the line of inquiry is important.
I get where you're going down, and I get, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I, after all the good memories that I've got in my family, it's that one thing I say to you, which is all the shouting, and it's like, well, hang on, why is that the predominant, like, even thought to come out? But it is. Do we want the more negative thing to come out? Because but no, there's probably a reason for that.
It's important to at least be aware of these things and get help if you need to. Like some of this stuff, like I discovered childhood sexual abuse only in the last 5 years. So I'm 60. It took me to 55.
You mean for yourself, you mean you suffered?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that.
I had been skirting around this issue for years and years. I'd had an inkling here,
no
a little
memories,
bit of a vision.
The memories weren't there. Yeah.
No. And I had an experience about 4 years ago, and something happened to me. And what happened was I started panicking, and I had felt like little electrical shocks all over my body, like all over. And I ended up calling a crisis line, because this was in the middle of the night. And the woman that spoke to me said, it is sometimes the sign that the abuse happens pre-verbal, when you feel it through your entire body. So the stuff that happened to me was before I could talk. And I wasn't ready to find the depths of this until 55. So always get help. You will not be given more than you can handle. Be brave to feel these things, because this was still having an influence. This energy of abuse and no value, and it answered so many questions about why my life had taken the path and the blocks that I'd had.
Well, that's very brave of you to just talk about that. Yeah, I mean, that's not an easy thing to bloody talk about. Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm sure other people will recognize that story and journey in themselves as well. So yeah, well, you've got to be able to talk about it, haven't you? It's the only way to sort of heal that part. Yeah. Okay, well, we're almost at the end here. I just want to add this as well. The final sort of thing is that, we even with my situation, there seems to be a timing involved. I've said this to you before in previous, that there's we can do all this healing and everything else, but there is some sort of, on a journey, there's
timing.
There's things out of your control completely. But we don't have to stay. We've still got options to leave, but we stay. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I don't know. I guess my main point was that if you do want to see something through, there's a soul's, there's your time and there's God's time, I guess, right? Or the soul's time.
Yeah. Yes. And the way that I often describe that is, what we're doing is we're in a stream or in a river, and we're holding onto the bank. And we're moving down the side, and we see a rock over there, and we push off and we go and grab the rock. And then we see a tree, and we push off and go to the tree. There are times in our lives when we just let go and allow the stream to take you. And that's the trust. And there's a balance between holding onto the bank and letting go. And we have to be as comfortable with either. We have to, if this is uncomfortable, be okay with feeling uncomfortable for a while. some people never hold on. There are some people that just allow the flow of the universe to take them, and that's their choice. But there's always good. It's always not a bad thing to have a bit of balance between directing it and then just letting go.
Yeah, that's a good advice. Actually, I think you can direct it, but you know, this as much as you've as much as you know it's perceived that you are. I mean, maybe it makes you feel better that you're trying to direct it. Do you know what I mean? But really, you know, maybe bigger picture you're not. But yeah, okay. But as you say, even if you're not, there's still, if you just flow. Yeah, you know, what's 10 years in prison? It's nothing, is it?
Well,
yeah.
If people are interested in this, there's a book by John Randolph Price, and it's called A Spiritual Philosophy for the New Age. And I read this, I don't know how many years ago, and it's about being in the flow. It's about a new way of existing and moving through life, which is surrender every day.
So just remind us of your website just one more time and where people can go for this course. It's been coming up on the screen just for the podcast, Jo.
Oh, yeah, it's jogifford.com. And if you go onto the shop tab, and the third option is the workshop, and that'll give you the two date options through the month of February.
Okay, well, listen, we've gone well over time here as well, and I just want to say thank you for just giving us that extra time as well. This is a very complicated subject, much more complicated than well, not complicated, but it's much more expansive than I gave it credit for, actually. There's so much to this, and I just wanted to give it that bit of extra overtime as well. And, well, yes, until next time, just thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been wonderful.